ahead and get the work session started.
It's getting awful pushy.
Don't have to be.
But you're, what did Arnold say? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Smooth, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. All right, so, at the call to order, we'll review the regular business and public hearing agenda items. We have a fairly light agenda tonight. Got the minutes to approve. Dave, you got a CID report?
A short one.
Departmental report on stormwater, are we gonna postpone that?
Because Gay cannot be here, I'd like her to be here. She may have, I could give you the information, but I may not be able to answer every question on specific projects, so it'd be good if we could delay that till
Sure.
the next meeting.
That's no problem. Then on new business, we just have the moratorium on the CUPs for churches with the BG zoning district. Anybody have any questions or concerns on that?
Now that expires in January.
It'll be 90 days from tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
It can be extended if that were, if that's.
And we're expecting we'll have a permanent resolution ordinance, and we will not use fighting words.
Oh, absolutely not.
And we're talking about that tonight too in the work session. The more permanent issues with that.
Okay.
Anybody have anything else on that? Okay, then we'll go back to the work session agenda. Correspondence, I had these two things in my box. Norton Insurance Division and Commercial Division Annual Wild Game Barbecue. Friday, October 20th in Gainesville. If anyone's interested.
Like an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
3 hours round trip. I'm good.
And then this is just a
You food you don't want.
confirmation from Rejoice in the Word Church. I had emailed out to everybody that they had invited us out for their groundbreaking event at 2:30 this Friday. So everybody's welcome to that.
Senior pastor Karen Jones she'll be delivering our invocation today
Okay, good.
also. So
Well, along those same lines in the correspondence thing, we have all been invited to this opportunity at Grace Fellowship Church. Celebrate Recovery. It's their 10-year celebration. They just reached out at the Public Safety Night. One of their folks was here and wanted me to get this to everybody. So we're all invited to that program,
Monday.
October 16th.
No.
And if I could add an agenda item on F and have a short conversation regarding the Veterans Memorial.
Yes.
Community release. Should I keep it for Chris?
Invocation, we have Karen Jones.
Uh-huh.
Pledge?
I believe it's gonna be the South Gwinnett JROTC, but I didn't get a chance to confirm with them today, so I'm hoping they'll show up without my confirmation.
Okay. Did that. Any other correspondence?
No, ma'am.
Tony?
We do need executive session.
Okay. All right, Snellville Art Commission Independence. Dave?
Yes, Independence Day can't come too soon. This has been suggested, I think actually Butch has initiated it. It's just really cumbersome for them to do things as they are, because they have to come in and get approval for $200, and it just, so we're looking at giving them some independence. I'm not sure of how we best do that legally, where we still have some say-so, but we don't have to get involved in everything they do, so they can go on. I assume Tony and or Chuck has some interest.
Well, I mean, those are, when you separate yourself legally, you know, if you're looking at them being their own independent organization, then you run the risk of not controlling the organization. You know, that's sort of that's the give and take of that relationship separation, is that in the normal course, those types of groups will organize themselves where they have control over the succession, and it becomes how much control. The less control you have, the easier it is for the group, because they don't have to do all the sunshine law stuff if they get independent of the city. And the other thing is that you have a potential for qualifying so that you can make charitable deductions to the group. And so.
Can we do that and still have them still require that council gives approval for any major project, so they don't get another blue wall? I mean, that's the real issue. is
Or
that-
windmill thing.
Those are totally inconsistent processes. You give up control, you get the blue wall.
Well, if it's on our property, they
Yeah.
won't be able to. do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay,
Control
well,
city property.
yeah.
What I would, have they looked at how other cities with arts programs have structured?
I don't know that. I would say no.
I would ask that they do some checking, maybe check with Swanee, because they've got a vibrant arts community going, and maybe Duluth.
In Duluth, yeah. that's
Talk
the
with the
other one.
leaders of their arts groups and find out how they're structured and what kind of agreements are made.
Well, the key to independence is funding.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to be, okay, independent, okay, you know, you're 18, you want to leave the house,
Right, that's right.
it's on you.
Yeah.
I mean, in the very basic terms. Now, you know, we have done some things with independent groups, such as our Explorers,
Right.
where we do fund matching, earn, you know, pay to play kind of thing. If you go out and raise X number of dollars, we'll match those up to X amount.
Yeah.
And they have the independence to do whatever they want to do within the limits of, you know, the scouts and the controls and things like that. So from a monetary perspective, that's the little bit that we have to do with that. We gauge them based on what they, if they don't go earn, you know, fundraising, then we don't get
Which we
involved.
have that relationship now with them.
Right, as far as with the
but
scouts.
it, but
No,
it
with the
does
Arts
come,
Commission.
yeah, but it does come out of the city budget.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty much,
They
Right.
have.
But they don't
that.
have any requirement we don't have any fund matching requirement. We've set aside X dollars, if I
I
remember
thought we
correctly.
matched up.
If they,
to-
Match
if they,
up to.
if their fundraisers make money, we match their profit.
Profit.
Their last 3 or 4 have lost money, and we haven't provided any dollars.
So what
there.
you're saying is we save money by having it that way. Is that
They've
what you're
got
saying?
$11,000 in the bank. They would take that with them.
Okay,
And you know, and I wasn't trying to be a hard case when we first started setting this up, but we needed to put financial guidelines in place so there was a system for us cutting them a check.
okay.
And they find that a little cumbersome, but I'm not willing to change that. We get audited. They're a component unit, I guess, of the city.
Well, if one of our directors in our city business operations gives you an invoice, it's gonna take a little while to get a check created. Or if you need a payment ahead of time, it's the same process. To me, it would be the same process. Now, the question is, we give them the independence. They say, if you're gonna do an art project on city property, then of course we would have to, this council and future councils would have to have some type of,
Yeah,
you know,
control.
input or control over that. Now, if the art creation people want to go to independent business people on their own property and do artsy things like that with them, I don't see how we can control that.
Either way.
No, I just don't see, you know, so the delineation for me is that, how do we handle the city funds? And then do we do that as a, like you say, we leave that in place and we do that as just part of a
Well, I
operation?
thought you were gonna go with the stat example. We have an annual contract with stat, and it very clearly states, here's the city's contribution, and this is what we get in return. This is the value we get in
Well,
return.
but-
So they could come to you and say, we'd like to provide, you know, this, and this for, you know, $1,000.
Well, they would have to create that first side of it though.
Yeah.
I don't see us creating that.
No,
Right.
no,
Because I mean, you know.
that'd be up to them.
You know, that would
It
be
could
up
be
to,
as-
you know, in that scenario, now that works, you know, kind of different. But, you know, I mean, I understand them wanting to have a little independence, but, you know, if you work within the guidelines that every department director has to work through right now.
And they want to do some things like set up a PayPal account. They want to get their C3 designation where everything's deductible, tax deductible.
Because they could potentially receive a lot more in donations if people could make a tax deductible donation to the arts community. So-
Without question.
And
So-
they can't do that through the city, for
Okay,
sure.
so do we wanna say as the city, you know, here's the 11,000, we've been a part of that. And
Well,
then if you wanna do a project within the city, you'll have to come to us, but outside of that, go do whatever you wanna do.
Well, I'd like to see what kind of relationship and setups some of the other cities have put in place. Because I know Swanee, I mean, they do their arts walk and they do a whole bunch, they've gotten a lot of artwork. It's like, I don't know what they've set up to do that. Whether they just have it as a committee under the city that they're operating on, or did they form a
Well,
nonprofit, or
We
what
can
do
probably
they
see
do?
that on their website.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll call them, I'll find out.
And that's the
Put that
easiest
back
thing
on
to
for
do.
next time.
Yeah.
I guess the easiest.
The
thing
issue
to do.
here is, do we want to pursue this or leave it as it is? That was,
No, I'm willing to pursue,
Yeah.
you know, other options for them.
Well, I mean, we don't wanna hinder it,
Mhm.
and if what we're doing is hindering it, then if there is a solution that's gonna keep us from getting in trouble, or having somebody look at us
yeah,
and say, well, you know, now I want a blue flower group, and I want the city to sponsor it.
Right.
No, and I'm not being facetious, I'm being honest. I mean, you could see that start to happen.
or a blue wall group.
Or a blue wall group, or a blue man group. I mean, you could do anything. So I think, again, if we're gonna restructure this, we do it the very best we can do to start with,
Okay,
and not try to back into it when we realize that we screwed up.
so put it back on for the
23rd.
23rd, and I'll see what I can find.
Okay, next is the amendment to structure signs ordinance, first read.
Structure signs. So that is the change based on the Best Buy sign.
That's the wall sign.
It's the wall sign. So, and the ordinance is designed to take away any freestanding signs that are not attached to buildings and that are not window signs. So it's pretty straightforward.
And it's really correcting a gap. You know, you use the word structure, meaning the building. You're looking at building type mounted signs. And
Well,
somebody
you're
construed-
defining structure now.
Somebody
Whereas
construed that
before,
to be
structure
a
wasn't
wall.
defined.
Yeah.
Yeah, structure could be a wall.
And yeah.
Right, there's a definition tied to structure now.
Right. So
All
that's,
it is.
that's.
So we'll have first read at the October 23rd meeting.
That's my understanding, yeah, there won't be, there's not a read tonight.
Right.
Because of the planning commission.
But we're within their moratorium time period.
That's right.
Nothing's happening to hers.
Okay. All right, special use permits, churches in BG district.
That one is really the concept that we've had just some confusion again over how the churches going into existing shopping centers and how they affect the shopping centers, and we wanted to have a debate over that. And so I think that was Councilman Emmanuel, at least in an initial thought of, that we'd seen some things that that weren't really going the way we had expected them to go. And,
They could if we had just said no.
yeah.
Let's just put that out
Yeah.
there.
Here-
For those of us that said no.
Yeah, here's the,
All right,
here's
Bobby.
the lawyer side of it, and this is not.
It was a hard-
manual
it was a
thing.
hard
It's more of a structure of how we give our permission, and when you put it in the context of a CUP, you're supposed to have just ironclad, structured, objective guidelines that says we meet it or we don't meet it, but you still have to come to council and get the thumbs up. You don't have any discretion in the application of the conditions. And off the top of that, my recommendation would be to switch that over to an SUP, where you're sitting with some discretion in how a meeting group, it's not, this would apply, this subject would apply to anybody using those facilities for non-retail commercial purposes. They are similar in that you have a lot of people showing up to go in a building, to in most instances shop, but in this instance, they're just gonna gather. And so it's got a lot of parking needs. It's got but then you're sort of gathering in a way in most instances where it's a big group and you have fire code issues that are different from normal retail issues. And so it's just, you have the other things that are commercial related that are a little hard to deal with, like setback requirements on alcohol sales, which is normally an open-ended discussion in a retail shopping center. When you put the church or the religious institution in there, state law changes the regulatory setbacks on those things. And so you're affecting a lot of things when it's coming in, and it becomes, okay, how compatible is that in terms of total encouragement of the commercial retail businesses in the city, inside shopping centers, when you introduce into it something that can be, if it were taking up most of the shopping center, the parking aspect of it, and it could be size regulations that you want to impose in it, which some cities do. It looks like to me most cities use the SUP. I think we're the only ones that use the CUP as a regulatory tool. And so it becomes size, number of parking places, and is that compatible with the uses that are already in there? If it seemed to me that in the SUP review process, if you already had a restaurant in the shopping center, that can be a grandfathered standard, but to me, it would almost be a justification right off the bat
To not
not have it, because it's gonna be there's gonna be more than one type of conflict that comes up from those uses, so.
My concern is if we deny on a CUP and they challenge it, we lose. That's why I think we need to move to an SUP.
Issues to think about.
So where do we go on that now? Are y'all working on changing that
We just
over?
we need a
More
little bit of
discussion?
instruction about what y'all wanna do. And your staff really came up with these today. These are comparisons of, other cities that are, how they regulate the same subject matter. And so it becomes, okay, what are the, first concept was, do we want to really switch it over from CUP to SUP? I think that was Councilman Emanuel's recommendation. Anybody have a problem with that being switched?
Well, is David's statement correct in the fact that if somebody does,
Absolutely, he
Okay.
nailed it. Yeah, that's absolutely the case.
okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, that in itself kind of answers the question for me, is that that's enough.
To the extent that we
Yeah.
are fighting over the issue, it takes it also from being a zoning decision with an appeal as a matter of right to a cert decision, which is what you saw. The area of our litigation has gotten much more complex because of a Supreme Court ruling recently. So what you saw happen in the Best Buy which dismissed really quickly, that has become the standard. And so not everybody's up to speed on, hey, the rules have changed. You gotta apply for cert. When you do that, you got a laundry list of, it is no small process to apply for cert coming out of a local body. So, you know, in their case, it wasn't tested. You know, they dismissed before we raised all the defenses that go with that. But we had a decision today out of Dawsonville that was pretty important for that city, and it was on the technicality of they didn't file the appeal to cert correctly. And so these are useful tools when we're defending the city to have in place. And so the SUP is a much superior defensive position to be in.
Okay. So y'all will work on that part of it, and then what else do you need from us?
It's sort of criteria, you know, we went through that litany just a minute ago about size and impact and alcohol. Are those the legitimate things that y'all want to build into your SUP standards?
Is there what is the negative of moving anything from a CUP to an SUP?
Well, you're making it much more difficult for the applicant. I mean, you're creating to a certain extent, a judicial hearing of application of SUP standards from a application as a matter of right that meets subjective standards. So it makes it harder for the applicant. I mean, that's really what you're doing. It's
Well,
Which I don't know if that's a bad thing.
well, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it does, if it puts us in a better defensive position in the event something does go sideways, I'd rather our city be protected first and foremost. If it's something we can change to affect that, then I think that's what we do. I think it makes it harder. You know, it makes it more difficult for a guy to go out here and chop down a tree too, because we made a change.
Mm-hmm.
when the CUP was originally implemented, I don't think there was a concern over, you know, it was just, okay, let's make sure these criteria are met and then we're good with it. And then council sort of announced a policy that they got concerned over the number of facilities coming into your retail areas and absorbing and changing sort of the commercial atmosphere of those locations. And so there was sort of announced policy, we're not really keen on the concept, but we didn't change the mechanism to okay, we don't.
Well, we just would take them as they came.
Yeah.
And then, you know, again, apply certain criteria and apply certain logic and theory and say, hey, there was a time that it made some economic sense to help the people that were not doing a good job filling their own buildings.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a mechanism for them to kind of extend their life, and it was nothing, to me, it was kind of what we did was life support for some of these people, more than anything else.
Yeah.
But the same way we approached it when the healthcare houses, started, Gwinnett County changed their policy.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, we became very, very active and had to react and did the same thing. So all we're doing is reacting to the current market conditions.
And the only CUP on here is under Snellville.
Is ours.
Nobody else has
Yeah.
CUPs,
So,
which I think says something.
Yeah, I think it's important also to look at that last page. And
Codes.
There's some Ps.
the parking,
Those are sort of the objective things that you would want.
The stuff at the
based on
bottom.
square
Second to
footage.
last page.
Yeah, it's the size of the facility that's required. If y'all wanted those to be part of the decision-making process, then it would, I would build those in and then sort of leave it to council to set the size limitations that you
well,
want.
and there again, just like setting, different things when we say the exceptions, we can set the bar so high
Right.
that we won't have anybody come.
Right.
I mean, we completely control that aspect of it by setting up the criteria.
Right.
And we do that at the front end, and then if we get that one rare instance where somebody meets all those qualifications, then looks like we got a church. and then you move on.
Right.
You know, but if the bar is set so high, I mean, you know, how often is that gonna happen? You just think, I just think you set the bar high enough that, you know, most can't climb over. In this case, I mean, it's, you know, I think you set the bar high for porn shops. I think you set the bar high for whatever else comes along that, you know, is not in the best interest, or at least my opinion, in the best interest of.
And we have a
Growing the
couple that
city.
are by permit, will we leave those?
That's gonna be up to you. We would probably recommend that you treat every class the same.
Right, that way, yeah.
You can leave them if you had a place where you said, okay, there's no doubt, if they apply in this class, we will give you a but I
Well,
would-
Gwinnett County, I mean, you know, Gwinnett County says you gotta have at least 5 acres. You've gotta have, you know, X, Y, or Z, you know, their first qualification is 5 acres.
Right.
This is not gonna happen. You know,
And that's a little odd, that's something, you know, you sort of do the same thing in terms of size. When you're looking at putting a church in a residential district under an SUP, you look at the surrounding land. In the shopping center, commercial, you're never looking at that. That's never coming into, you know, you're waiving that right off the bat when you allow them to apply, because it never has enough land that gives you the space requirements for outdoor play. What is a traditional house of worship usually has some spacing. And it's not just parking and building. It's playgrounds and ball fields and those kind of things in terms of traditional space. So you're looking at area minimums. Well, when you get into the commercial side of things, you don't have any of that. And the question becomes, okay, does there have to be an area with an outdoor playground, even in the shopping center? You know, do they have to get to a location that allows a playground, you know, for the children's area of this gathering facility?
well, there again, that's the bar.
Right. It's what should be in the bar. And I'm just sort of sounding around. I've said some things that I think are bar, and I'm wondering, is there anything else in the regulation of meeting places and houses of worship and churches? Is there anything in a retail area that you think should be included in the bar?
Well, the distance to a restaurant would be,
Restaurants or even potential restaurants.
is already that kind of if you can't put a restaurant next to a church, then you can't put a church next to a restaurant. It would seem to be logical, which doesn't always mean that's the way it is.
Right.
One of your criteria for exercising special use permit is that it's to take into account what's around it. And so if you know, restaurants is a good example. It's sort of a light intrusion, but if you have something that is going to be operating full blast at the same time, and you're clearly not going to have parking, its compatibility of surrounding uses usually becomes part of an SUP bar. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. Well, let us draft up, and we'll bring it to the next work session and give you our translation of the bar.
Yeah. I would either just go ahead and throw some things in there to get us started with what you think, and then we can
Yeah,
just adjust up or down and.
we're not the first ones to do this.
No,
Right.
you're not.
The template's there.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we have the amendment to the alcohol ordinance for farm wineries.
So last meeting, you all approved to go ahead and have us change the ordinance to allow for the farm wineries, which is the individuals who make at least 40% of their product comes from their own farm, which evidently this Operation Homebrew, he has a farm and this will come from him. Though that's set by the state. The state regulates whether or not he qualifies. We just have to regulate whether or not we were going to allow him to do so and to have a tasting room. And so that's what you all had approved last time, and I had indicated that there were a bunch of new changes to the alcohol code by the state under Senate Bill 85, which I was going to bring to you with those other options for you all to consider. So SB 85 went into effect September 1st. And just give you a real quick overview. Typically in Georgia, alcohol is regulated what they call a three-tier system. You have the manufacturers, the wholesalers, and the retailers. And the lobbies, really for the wholesalers, had kind of really separated those so that the people who made the alcohol couldn't sell it themselves. You had to give it to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers had to sell it to the retailers. Then you recall about 2 years ago, there was a big push, a lot by Sweetwater Brewery, and some of the breweries wanted to be able to give away free samples at least, and they had worked it in where there'd be tours, and then they could get a free sample at the end of the tour. Well, SB 85 took that much further, and so they really changed three main areas. And the first is distilleries. So in the past, distilleries were these big places that really were more industrial than anything. What they've done now is they've allowed distillers to retail sell a portion of their alcohol, both on premises by the drink as well as by package. And that's opened up for craft distillers. There's a couple in downtown Atlanta that have set up shop.
Do they make a distinction between beer and quote-unquote distilled spirits?
Yes. Distilleries are totally different than breweries.
Okay.
Now, where it gets interesting too is when they talk about fortified wines, where you have actually mixing of wine with distilled spirits, but they've basically said that doesn't change the classification of
Well,
wines.
craft beers do that too. They infuse using distilled spirits or barrels that have been aged.
Sure.
I mean, they do that, so
But they don't address that in the code. There's distilleries make, the distilled spirits that are done through a distillation process.
Right.
Whereas, they call it malt liquor, or malt beverage, excuse me, not malt liquor, malt beverage, excuse me. And, college days. Sorry.
a little Colt 45 in your background there, buddy?
Sorry.
Apparently, that's some distilled liquor.
A little Colt 45?
But they're based more on ferment. So in any event, so there is a potential now that you can see the craft distilleries. When I was in Knoxville on deposition a couple months ago, and in kind of their restaurant row by the college, there were just loads of these little hole-in-the-wall distilleries making their own bourbons, vodkas, and gins. So that's something that we can see coming.
They're all over Dawsonville out in the woods.
Those are called
Talking about your
those
relatives.
wouldn't be covered, they're not paying their taxes.
They're all over.
But those are not addressed at all in our current code. Now, we've got a really good, I know you all just changed the alcohol ordinance and updated it right before I started with the firm, but it's really forward-thinking. It's got a lot of stuff in there that, I've researched a ton of ordinances, and we're way up there, but we don't have anything with distilleries. So that's one of the first things is, do we want to consider adding distilleries to our code as one of our uses? The second is breweries. Breweries are basically very similar in the way the laws treat them now. Breweries can now sell a limited supply, well, it's not really that limited, it's fairly sizable, but can also retail sell their beer. Now, and again, it has to be served or sold through the premises, so it can't be made somewhere else and then sold or have it at a restaurant. It's literally right there, they can sell it themselves, and they can sell it through package sales. So that would require a slight tweak. We do have a brewery provision in our ordinance, but it doesn't have the provisions. It mainly has the tour language I talked about from 2 years ago. It doesn't have the provisions in it for the retail sales, so we need to tweak that.
So we're just bringing it up to SB 85 standards.
We are,
In
but
essence.
there's some
In
different, these are the things that are codified by state law, but we can decide, what we want to. Now, what's interesting is the breweries and the distilleries, as long as they have their state permits, are not required to get a local retail sales permit. They do still have to pay excise taxes, pay their excise taxes, and you can charge the investigative fee, which is also in our ordinance for the inspections, but they don't have a separate retail sales like you normally would. Now, kind of the weird hybrid there, the third thing that SB 85 affected was brew pubs. And what they did with the brew pubs, which are places which both sell the beer and have, I believe, 50% of their sales are food-based, but they can now actually sell beer that they make on premises, or also beer that they just have, kind of like a growler shop type setup, but they can sell package sales out the door as well. So that's definitely, again, we have brew pubs in our ordinance, but it doesn't contemplate the retail package element that is in.
It's only on-site consumption.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's, you know, in talking about, we were gonna add the farm wineries provision anyway, so at that point, we're changing it. Do y'all wanna go forward with going ahead and getting it all up to date, anticipating that this other stuff may come?
Definitely, yes.
And then we don't have to do it piecemeal as things
No.
pop up.
No need.
Another issue that
Go
come
for
up,
it all.
and this is not necessarily SB, well, it partially is controlled by SB 85, but there had been some talk, really about a year and a half ago, from one of our specialty grocery stores that wanted to do some wine tasting. I was in contact with them, trying to get some size requirements and find out their square footage. They weren't very good about getting back with us, but that's probably something we want to go ahead and address, just not for that store, but what's been addressed by some jurisdictions as a tasting room. Grayson does that in their, the Grayson package store for
Right,
wine.
yeah, and it's to the back of the
Right.
building.
But it's
kind
very
of-
limited.
Right.
It's, you have to have a special license for it, because obviously what you want to, you keep away from is having every grocery store or stop shop that sells alcohol, just letting people drink on premises.
Some of the Kroger's downtown now are serving
Yeah.
alcohol.
Well, and this would, what you have, most of the statutes I looked at, or the ordinance I looked at, you have to already have a retail sales license. You have to get a special permit from the city. You have to include a component, like an educational component, like about the wine, learning about the wine. You limit the consumption amount, and you don't do it, but on, you know, an occasional basis. So that's something.
And that's something that Fresh Market would be,
Fresh Market would be one that would probably be interested in doing something like that, but you know, mentioned Kroger, they're redoing everything there, they might, that would,
Component.
you know, it would open up to all.
Well,
those
I'm just
places.
saying there are some. Kroger has done
Right.
that across different places. I know a
And
couple
then
of places.
the other thing that Tony brought up is, we have, and again, talking about, we're very forward thinking, we have these
That new
personal
Kroger.
service businesses, like we have the nail salons that can have the wine sales, and the art stores that can have it. So if anyone has approached you, you know, with anything new, we haven't heard anything else, but it would kind of fit into that, now would be the
That one you
time
go to.
to bring that up, if there's some kind of separate kind of business that's not covered right now.
I get my nails done just for the wine.
You can, mega nails.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
they do.
I guess I'm kind of looking, so, you know,
The one over
do
by,
you all-
Fresh.
do y'all want us to
Market,
look to
too.
incorporate all of those things? Do you want to
Yeah.
leave distilleries out? Do you want to leave, I mean, we need
I
some
like them all.
direction from you all on what you want us to do.
I mean, I'm kind of like Barbara. I think we need to front load it with as much as we can that makes sense, and then let's back off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless anybody's got qualms about any one particular thing that you don't wanna see in there,
And we just want the playing field, you know, level across,
Right.
you know, where it needs to be level. You know, if
Makes
you're
us
gonna-
competitive with other communities.
Yes.
Right.
Well, as
We've had a lot of these conversations
Right.
already with.
You know, a great example is what's going on in Lawrenceville with Slow Pour. They've timed it just right
Yeah.
with the statute coming. They have a tasting room now, so they have their brewery, and
Keep it
then
over
they
there.
have a tasting room to sell it right there.
Right.
So-
And there's been some inquiries, you know. Monkey Wrench Brewing, the guy that, I mean, he's had some inquiries. So,
All
alright,
right, we'll go on.
load it up. Okay, the ongoing projects, how much time do we need for the exec session?
Not long.
I can do this real
Yeah,
quick.
Okay.
5 to 10 minutes.
The first item, as usual, we do need an executive session to get a couple of updates. On the second one, we are pushing the county, sent another note over to Glenn today. We're pushing them for all we can. We did have a meeting with the library board, well, I guess the executive director of the Gwinnett County Libraries and his development manager. So they're on board, very supportive. They're also going to be pushing the county to get this thing out. And they'll be helpful in the future. Public relations, marketing, I sent a link to you guys today. Steve Darrell, on his own, working with Brian Harrington, came up with what he calls a monthly city update. I mean, it's snappy, it's fast, it looks good, it sounds good. Y'all take a look at that when you just open that email and look. We haven't talked pricing, we haven't done anything, but it's something that I think it goes right along with the follow-up videos, Facebook videos from the meetings. It's something that I think that would be an addition to our marketing PR efforts. Town hall meetings, once again, it's gonna be some time before we need one of those, unless something comes up, so, we just need to work on format and content when a subject does come up. Unified Development Ordinance, I got a note from Caleb. Basically, they have been working on 4 different things: reformatting the existing regs in the new UDO structure, coordinating with Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County has adopted a new stormwater manual. It's voluminous, and we're going to make sure that we're in line wherever we need to be. Completion of a draft tree conservation updates, as well as updating the site development standards. So, and that the draft should have said month instead of week. We should receive something in October. Audiovisual is done. The products are being ordered. We're working on a time for installation, trying to work around the court date and mayor and council meeting. Roundabout construction, I know Webb Tanner and Powell has several closings scheduled, working on that. We're no more property negotiations at North. Basically, we're down to 2 at Ridgedale, one that everybody knows about, and one that should be closed out this week. 78 and 124, it's been a very slow go. Nothing has changed since the last update. Pittman did hold a utility coordination meeting with Gwinnett Water. That will be a big part of the job, and it's important that they communicate and work together. Business Retention Committee, working with the Mayor Pro Tem on setting up that first meeting through Eric and the members. SPLOST program, once again, the county is working on specific agreements. Hopefully they'll be on the next agenda that we can approve. And there's nothing to report as far as higher education is concerned.
On the Unified Development Ordinance, the draft that he's doing, is he gonna have like, this is the new one that we think, and then I'd have to look at the old one and the new one and try to figure out where this came from over here?
He'll make some notes.
Okay, so it's gonna be like this
Yeah,
is
so
ours,
you
this is
won't
ours.
have to have both
Okay.
of them sitting there. He'll make
Okay.
some notes on what's changed and the major items there.
Okay.
Make it easier to review for sure. But it's gonna take time to, gonna take a couple of meetings to go
Well, I figure
over
because it's the whole thing, so. it's-
several
Okay.
sections there.
Okay. All right, so the item that we added, the Snellville Veterans Memorial.
Can anybody give me an update? I know I brought this up a few weeks ago. Can anybody give me an update where we are? I
It was
mean,
working yesterday, it's not working today, it will be working this week again. There are
okay.
several issues with it. Apparently, anybody who said I'm an electrician has gone in there and done something.
Mhm.
I got in touch with
So,
Bill at
so when you
Coastal
say,
Bonds.
so I'm looking at, the flame was not lit just a
Flame?
little while ago, and
The
was
flame,
turned
we
out because of
cut
the
the
weather.
gas to the flame
The
because of the
water,
weather. The
yeah.
weather knocked the flame out, so we cut the gas
and,
on that.
and then it looks like somebody's been inside.
Yes. There were several problems with, is the reason it wasn't running.
Okay,
Bill came out and got it running yesterday,
okay,
and it was down this morning because of something
Okay.
that we need to look at again. I
Okay.
think what happens is rocks have been getting into the impeller
mhm,
and stopping it.
mhm,
So
okay.
he put a
We've
mesh
got
on
Bill
it.
from Coastal Pond.
Okay, so we're working on the thing and
Yeah.
we're getting it now. I guess you're still the keeper of the checkbook with the
Yes.
funds.
Yes.
Does the foundation have sufficient money to
Mhm.
keep this thing in operation?
Yes.
Okay.
We
And
just
and
need
I
the
just,
people
it hurts to see it not
I-
working.
I know.
And I know it's not, it just hurts.
But I tell you, the other thing that we're looking for now, and I've been striking out so far, is we need somebody that can do some tile replacements for the new tiles that have come in. So if you know of somebody,
I've
You've
already
got
got the
somebody?
guy coming tomorrow, we're gonna meet.
okay, good.
So, you know. I
Because we
think-
need to get some the new tiles put up before.
And a couple of
Veterans Day.
bricks too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a plan and we get, you know, the last was just, something's on back order, nothing, nothing seems to be getting done with it. And it just breaks my heart that people were very excited about this thing and it was a place of sanctuary for people and we're letting it go into disrepair.
Yeah.
And if the foundation doesn't have the wherewithal to keep it running, then we need to make some other decisions to keep it up and going as a light in this city. And as a fountain that everybody's proud of.
Yeah. And it's not the foundation issue, it's just been some of the people issue in working on
Well, it's
it, so-
always people issue.
Well, I know.
I mean,
This one's
if it wasn't for people, life would be so much better.
This is not a funds issue. Last thing is, second meeting in November would be the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday. We do, there is a CUP or something, zoning thing that may be coming up that would be scheduled for that meeting, just depending on whether we're gonna have it or not. Council's gone either way, whether we cancel that meeting or whether we have it. Just wanted to ask everybody, what's your preference?
We're back in school, I'm here.
Yeah.
So,
I won't be here.
not a problem.
Oh, you'll be gone.
Oh.
Gretchen's sitting right there.
I know Gretchen has.
So how do you vote?
Yeah, I know Gretchen has.
Gretchen will be gone.
I'll be 50 years old by then.
So maybe we not have that meeting
I can have a
The
conversation.
When I
27th.
talked to John in planning, he said it's not a problem
if we postpone it to, okay. All right, so we'll cancel.
Well, we've had one in November before.
Yeah, we
And
have.
it's not.
We've gone back and
Unusual.
forth.
It's not the first time we've.
No, I mean, I think it usually winds up getting canceled, but
20, it would have been the 27th, so no 27th.
correct.
So we'll just have our 13th.
You'll get an extra night off.
We probably won't meet on Christmas Day either, I wouldn't think.
You don't think?
Yeah, we'll just skip that
I
one.
thought we were gonna exchange gifts.
Okay, so that's the end of the work session agenda. During the work session of the Madison City Council of Snellville, Georgia, Mayor Pro Tem Bender announced that certain